So, welcome everybody. Veil of Sound. And no, it's not a Sunday, it's a regular weekday, which means that we got something special coming up for you. And when we do, we also try to look across our natural borders in music. And a few weeks ago, I saw somebody on a cooking show, I have to admit, my guilty pleasure. And he was introduced with similar words like, oh, he likes rock and metal. And I thought like, okay, let's check that guy out. And I'm very happy to have Curtis Duffy here on the show. Chef Curtis, thanks for joining.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
First question, what's for family today?
What's for family? Meaning family meal?
Yeah, no, the family, the stuff that your guys are cooking for you.
Actually, I'm not sure what's for family meal yet. It's only noon here, so the guys are starting to arrive. I would say, we always try to do, well, we always do a healthy drink, probably vegetable based usually with some fruit in it, to kind of keep the immune system up for the staff, to keep them from being sick all the time. We do a protein, some starch, a vegetable, and always a dessert for all the staff. And right now we're about 60 staff deep.
60 at Everest.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, that's between Ever, After, and the Canvas by Ever.
Okay.
So between the three restaurants, we do about 60 people a day, just for family meal.
Yeah. So for everybody who's not familiar with Curtis, Curtis is running a few places in Chicago. And can I say the flagship is Ever Restaurant?
That is correct, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the philosophy behind Ever?
Yeah, so Ever is a tasting menu only, degustation style menu. And it ranges from 12 to 15 courses on a daily basis, very heavily rooted in vegetables. There's a lot of protein throughout the menu as well, but I tend to lean towards the vegetable side. It seems for me it's a little bit more diverse, and the ability to cook them a lot of different ways, different styles, interesting ways. So it is a 10 to 15 course tasting menu. It's about a 2.5 hour experience for the guest. You sit down, you're either with the wine pairing or you're drinking maybe non-alcoholic beverages. And it's really, we just let us take you on the experience of what we do every day.
Would you say that the way that you compose the tasting menus is similar to the way that bands put together their set lists?
Yeah, I have a decent amount of friends that are in rock bands and growing up listening, obviously, to music my entire life. And I do kind of think of, my menu and my cuisine in terms of maybe way, a musician would think about composing the record and then the end result, of course, you have your highs and lows and anything in between. And, not everything is going to be a hit for everybody. You might walk away from an album saying that's the best track on that album, and
exactly,
it may never reach number one or not even to the music list, but that might be your favorite. So I think that kind of similar aspects of the way the diners look at our food compared to music as well. It's like, not everything is a hit, and we can't please everyone with every single dish. We're fully aware of that. But it does tell a story every season.
So you've sent me a wonderful list full of stuff that you would choose as island records. We have Danzig, we have Nine Inch Nails, Pantera, Priest, Sabbath. Also some older stuff, older than you and me. We're both kids from the 70s. You have The Doors and Creedence, of course. But has there been any kind of like gateway record or song that got you into our kind of music?
When I was very young, my dad was always listening to rock and roll. Creedence was always on the, at the time we were listening to reel to reels. My dad set up the reel to reel. So there was Iron Butterfly always playing. There was Quiet Riot and AC/DC, and all of that that was my world. So that's what I grew up listening to. And I can't say there was an exact song, but I just always enjoyed that style of music. It's just, that's who I am, you know?
Did you and your dad, yeah, you go first.
Yeah, I think, go ahead. Yeah.
Did you and your dad, and also later when you developed your own taste, when you got into other bands, did your dad share, or does your dad share the passion for that stuff? Like you listed Nine Inch Nails, Manson, Pantera. Is he also into that?
Actually, my father has passed away in '94. So some of those bands weren't even around at the time.
Yeah, that's true.
They are now. But, you know, like Pantera was just coming on the scene in the '90s. And, you know, obviously Black Sabbath has been around since the '70s. But, you know, I would have to think that he would probably enjoy some of it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think he'd have to enjoy some of it. I wouldn't say he would enjoy all of it, but yeah, I think most of it he would probably listen to.
So, of course, one question that is on my mind, when you're in the kitchen with your staff, silence or music?
It's actually complete silence. It's a weird juxtaposition because, you know, people look at my food, the style of food, and it's very elegant and almost feminine qualities to it, but very, very light touches to everything. And then they see me with all the tattoos and hear that I love the heavy metal and death metal. And it's just like, they can't wrap their head around it, you know? But for me, like, that's my release. But I need complete silence in the kitchen. I need that focus from every one of my staff members to be focused and not have very minimal distractions during the time that they're here. So that's important. And music for me it's a distraction in the kitchen. Although at home, I have music playing all the time. So whether I'm cooking or...
So let's get that straight. You say there is complete silence already when you're doing the mise en place, or only when the door is open?
Always, even during the mise en place. Yeah, so if we walk to the kitchen right now and you'll see, you know, 15 to 20 staff member out there, it's super quiet. And that's the way it is all day and night.
Which I can imagine that helps to focus a lot. And I also guess that, I mean, like, we are talking to a 2-star Michelin chef who had already restaurants with 3 stars for several years in a row. I can imagine a lot of the dishes also, even though they're light in character, to be not easy to cook and also to plate. So I figure that silence is the only way to do that properly all the time, right?
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of nonverbal communication through eye glances and just knowing what everybody's step is, what everybody's next step is to building those dishes. And ultimately, it becomes so muscle memory for everybody, including the front staff, that when they see, you know, let's say the beet dish, there's a final preparation to the beet dish before it walks into the dining room. So
of course,
the moment that happens, we don't need to say we have 2 beet ready. No, like, that's the last step. They walk. So it's, you know, between the expediter and the cooks, it's a very command and response setup, very military, if you will, where it's, you know, the response is exactly what's called and nothing else.
Yeah, I can imagine. The way that you describe it and the way that I experienced it myself when I worked in the kitchen, there is some kind of concertation to it, you know, like it's like, I don't want to say symphony, but because that always sounds so strange, but there is a certain thing about it where you see, like, okay, that is, when everything works together, it's perfect. Like, Yeah, like a concerto in a way. Is it important for you to get this flow going every day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I very much reference, the kitchen being somewhat like a classical ballerina dance where it's
Mm-hmm.
everybody has their part, everybody knows their part, um, and they have it down so well every single day. They're performing basically every single day, and one mistake can lead to the next, and it becomes a snowball effect. So to minimize those mistakes during service, it's important that everything is there's a tone that's set every single day, and that tone is you know lived up to
Mm-hmm.
through the cooks, and orchestrating every movement is I always try to think of like there shouldn't be a movement in the kitchen that's wasted. So everything has a purpose, everything has a reason why you move a certain way, the way you put things back in a certain place, that
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to think about it. It just becomes, you set your squeeze bottle of basil puree here every single time.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to think where it is. You grab it, and
Yeah, yeah.
you become more efficient in every single thing that you do. And then it becomes a very well-oiled machine.
You've mentioned your love for metal and for death metal and heavy metal. How do you feel about music which is elongated, which is longer than, let's say, 5-6 minutes?
I enjoy it. I enjoy it as well. I enjoy whether it just being a longer guitar solo. I mentioned Iron Butterfly earlier with the Inagata Vida and the 17-minute song, and with the a 8-minute drum solo. I love those moments that a band or musicians can break away and just really showcase, hone in on one certain thing, and just I love Primus is great like that. They'll just incredible bass lines that they just drop, and Les Claypool is just a genius when it comes to that. But I enjoy all that stuff. Yeah.
Where was I? Oh, yeah. You listed priest. And of course, one normal question that comes from that, what about Maiden?
I just saw Maiden about 4 months ago here in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
The first time seeing them, actually, I was pretty blown away by their stage presence and the theatrical and all the things that they do on stage. I just never got into Iron Maiden. It just wasn't in one of, just wasn't my thing. There's obviously Megadeth, Metallica, and Anthrax, and then there was always Iron Maiden. I didn't get it as much as I know people do around me. A lot of my friends are just diehard Maiden fans. Something about it just didn't do it for me.
Do you also have somebody in the kitchen who likes the stuff of music that we like? Because I'm very sure it's not mandatory to work in your kitchen to listen to metal.
Oh, maybe it is. It should be.
Maybe.
I should go through that. Yeah. That should be one of the interview questions, is like, what do you listen to? What's in your PlayStation?
Yeah.
But no, it's there's a few out there that do enjoy, probably not as much as me, but yeah, some of the more mainstream stuff, like I don't know, like Rage Against the Machine, and they're probably more into that than more so like Marilyn Manson or Nine Inch Nails or somebody like that.
What struck me when I looked at your list, probably it's just because you made that list, is that there is, if I saw it correctly, there is no record by a band that came up, let's say, post-millennium. Is that just because you have been working so much since, let's say, the mid-90s, or is it because you just don't have, or you just haven't found newer bands that you like?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I don't want to fall into where my dad would have been, where it's like he would probably still be listening to Quiet Riot every day, or I don't want to feel like I've found my core people that I love listening to, and if they're still making music, that's great. I'll continue to support them because I'm always looking for new stuff. Absolutely, always looking for new stuff. The list that I sent you tend to be like my everyday go-to, my stuff
Yeah,
that I enjoy listening to, that stuff that I could probably listen to every day of the week and never get tired of it.
that's true. We all have those records, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
do you play any instrument yourself?
I played the drums when I was younger
Mm-hmm.
for about a year, and realized that I couldn't dedicate enough time to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was too loud for my neighbors; they hated it. So I quickly gave that up, and that was probably 23 years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
in the last year, I started to play bass, which is
Mm-hmm.
an instrument that I've always loved, and I've always it's just I love that instrument. I love the sound of it. And so I started taking lessons. And a great friend of mine gifted me a bass that one of his favorite bass companies, LTD, and he bought me an incredible bass as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
And so I starting to learn how to play that now.
Cool. So you are actively taking lessons, or how do you learn playing the bass?
So yeah, I've taken a few lessons, and then the new year came around and things have been busy. I play every single day
Mm-hmm.
for about 30 minutes. I'm trying to a lot of YouTube stuff, trying to get, I really want to get back into taking the lessons,
Mm-hmm.
trying to find the right person, the right time. I have very limited time, so it's got to meet my schedule, and it's such a small window. And I feel like if I'm going to do it, I need to commit myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like to do things half-assed, if you will.
Yeah.
So I want to commit, and I want to be great at playing bass, at least
Mm.
as an amateur.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to somebody I know in Chicago who is a great bass player.
Oh yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll do that later on.
Yeah, thank you.
What struck me also about the list that you sent me is that it seems as if you have a lot of records on there. For example, you listed Danzig 1 and 2. You have Sabbath, one of the first ones on there, Slayer's Season in the Abyss, which we'll come to later. It struck me that a lot of those records are one of the first, let's say, 4 in that band's discography. Sure. Would you agree that the first contact that you have with a band is also very often the record that sticks most?
I'd like to say that sometimes when, the first record of a band, I would think, this is only my opinion, of course, I don't know, and I can't speak for every band out there, but I would have to think that the amount of distractions that come into play after the success of, a band blowing up to, a certain level, that the distraction of making the second, third, fourth, and fifth record is not so much of a priority as that first record and everything that goes into that record. And I think sometimes maybe that's the greatest of somebody's repertoire, but I could also say that not always the case. I mean, there's if you look at Manson's gone on to make numerous records, and some of his last 2 or 3 records have been some of his best records as well. So
I know what you mean.
I put down those lists because
I know what you mean. Ahead. It's like you got 20 years for your first record, but only 20 months for the second one.
Yeah, and what else in between? You're touring, you're promoting, you're doing all these things, and then you're left with little time to, put towards that second record. third record, fourth record, and things become more demanding. And there's a lot of great bands that do it well, that continue to put album after album. It's phenomenal.
Does your natural listening habits, do those have any influence on your cooking?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'm not sure. I like to think that, with ever, I am more in tune with who I am as a person. To then, I guess it would translate so much more into my food. So, before I was shy away from, if I wanted to do something a little bit more edgy, maybe I would hold back because I was more concerned about what, a critic might think about this, or the way a certain food would look or taste. And now it's like, I'm just going for it. This is who I am. It's my personality. There's been a point where we've had, edible skulls on a plate, and that's okay. Some people are like, what? It doesn't make sense, but it's fun and it's who I am. It's rock and roll,
Do you have any kind of reaction in your head how people reacted to your edible skulls? I've seen the recipe itself. I was like very happy to see somebody do like that. But what did your guests say about stuff like that?
I'd say 95% of them loved it. I would say probably, the older crowd, maybe 60 and up, were probably like, I don't really understand it. But that's okay. It's for me, it's a form of expressing who I am. Food has always been that for me. It's just my voice. It's who I am. And as an artist, whether a musician or a painter or a sculptor, that's their voice. And we get judged on that every single day. For me, as someone who owns a restaurant and as a chef, every single day, every guest, good or bad, has an opinion, has their own opinion. And there's not a lot of industries out there like that you're constantly, every single day, getting judged by somebody who thinks one way or the other.
Coming to some of the records more in detail, you have Nine Inch Nails with two of their mid-era records, let's say. You got With Teeth and The Fragile. No Downward, no Hate Machine? How that?
Well, for me, I wanted to go something more that was not so much played out, if you will. In a sense that Downward Spiral, everybody knows, it's like, it's that record that put them on the map with Closer, and it's Manson's Sweet Dreams. Every time that comes on, I'm like, fast forward, because it's I didn't pick those records because those are the mainstream, those are the but I enjoy the record for other reasons, like With Teeth would be Beside You in Time would be a great song for me from that record. With my wife and I have a great connection to that song, and so that's one of the reasons that's one of my favorite records.
So does your wife share your love of metal?
100%, yeah. Not every single band, but Nine Inch Nails is her all-time favorite band for sure.
Okay.
We do share a lot of similar music.
That's cool. You listed Slayer's Season in the Abyss, and now I don't want to say you might bite your own argument, but I mean, like, Seasons in the Abyss together with Rain and Blood is like probably one of the most played Slayer albums, right?
Yeah.
So there must be a different connection to that album then.
Yeah, I think music, as like food, there's another, side by side, is like music hits you in a place and it takes you to a place a memory, right? It takes you to, whether it's a good time or a bad time, it brings you somewhere, you know, very nostalgic. And Slayer for me was like, don't remember what year it was, early 90s, of course, maybe even the late 80s, when that album came out. And
late 80s.
Yeah, it's that was a great time for me. That was like me searching and finding new music, and this thrash metal that they were producing back then that was new and hard and just like grungy. And that's, at that time, I think I was skateboarding even at that time, and that's what I wanted. That's what I loved. And so I picked some of these records because they bring back some of the nostalgia memories that were a happy time in my life.
Totally true. I can get that. What is also very interesting, that, and I like that because that makes the list in a way very consistent and cohesive. Many of, or basically all the records that you have on there, they have a knack for melody. There is not a lot of dissonance on those records. Is that important to you, melody?
Yeah, you know, I do, you know, I would say that not every song has to have a hook to it, but there's something that connects you to that. Yeah, absolutely. I certainly don't mind the melody of some things that, you know, you can really get into, and it sticks with you, and it just makes you want to play that again and listen to it again. You know, I woke up the other day and I was laughing, and my wife was like, "What are you laughing at?" I said, I woke up singing an Anthrax song. And she's like, "Well, what were you singing?" And I was singing Caught in a Mosh. And it is the line that was stuck in my head. I don't know why, but it was that line that talking to you is like clapping with one hand. It kept repeating in my head, and that's what I woke up to singing.
I can see that. So I have like one question left before we come to our infamous quickfire round at the end. And that is something that struck me, is that on your record, on your list, sorry, you have a lot of metal and cool stuff. But I mean, like, we're both children of the 70s. You're 75, I'm 78. And you have no grunge record on there. How did that happen?
Yeah, you're talking like Nirvana, Soundgarden.
Oh, also, I'm talking about stuff like Tat or Alice in Chains or Green River.
Yeah, I mean, all of those were, those were my high school years. You know, the early 90s and the mid 90s. I don't know. I mean, I enjoyed it. I appreciate it. I like those bands. You know, Soundgarden was phenomenal when they came out. It just, for some reason, they don't stick with me. They're not my go-to, I guess. I don't know why.
All good.
Exodus. I love Exodus. Of course, that's not the 90s grunge, but
that's probably the period when you listened to Exodus, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also, earlier in my junior high years too, 7th, 8th grade. You know, Fabulous Disaster was one of my favorite albums from them. But you know, like I said in my email, I had a list of things that I could. It was hard to put down 10.
It is.
10 was difficult. I'm like, shit. It's hard to come up with 10.
It is.
You know, I go from Bowie, Queen to Depeche Mode, and I'm all over the place. But you know, it's 10 is tough.
And as I know that you got a lot of tattoos, is there any music-related tattoo that you got?
Oh, yeah. I have a beautiful Danzig skull on my shin. That's about it, really.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
So our quickfire round, you always get two alternatives, like roses versus tulips, and you have to choose one of them. and maybe give a short explanation. Of course, it's roses, I would say. My wife would say it's tulips, and she would say so because she lived in Holland for a few years.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Let's stick with something easy. Primus or Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Primus.
Mm-hmm. Alice in Chains versus Soundgarden.
Ooh, Alice in Chains.
Hmm? Which song would you rather listen to right now? Slayer's War Ensemble or Raining Blood?
War Ensemble.
Mm-hmm. As you live in Chicago, you can now make some enemies. The Cubs or the White Sox?
I would have to say the Cubs. Yeah, the Cubs. I'm gonna piss a lot of people off, but that's all right.
Paul Bocuse or Ferran Adrià?
Oh man, both very important figures.
Yes.
I would say Paul Bocuse because I think he gave his shoulders for Ferran to stand on. As all great giants in the food world, there's somebody always before you to make you better than who you are.
That's true.
For the next person, you know. So.
Rage Against the Machine's self-titled record debut or Evil Empire?
I would say self-titled.
Mm-hmm. What is more your go-to, death metal or black metal?
Probably death metal.
Mm-hmm. By the way, do you have a death metal record that you really, really, really like? That's like one of your go-tos where you're like, yeah, that's
one. I wish I could look up my playlist right now. We'll come back to that one.
We can come back to that one. Anthrax versus Exodus.
Anthrax.
Mm-hmm. By the way, do you then also like the stuff that one song that they did with Public Enemy when they mix genres?
Yeah. When they started doing that, crossing over, what song was that? That was
the first real one is Aerosmith's Walk the Line.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I love when Anthrax did they did a couple songs, one Public Enemy. Yeah, I love when they started mixing it up. I think it's great. It shows a lot of diversity in the band and not taking themselves so seriously and being able to just do a huge genre of different things. I think that's awesome. You know, I love when I see live music and a band will go off and play someone else's music and just crush it. You know, I think that's special to watch.
So when we are already talking about covering songs, the same song but by two very different artists, Hurt, originally by Nine Inch Nails, or the Johnny Cash version?
As much as I love Johnny Cash, I would say the original is better. You know, Johnny Cash took out a verse out of the original, so I'm going to stick with the original.
Is that important for you, that at least in some ways you stick to the original?
I mean, I think if you're taking the song from somebody, yeah, I think it's your responsibility to at least give the song its entirety, but obviously your freedom to change how you rework it. But if you're missing out a whole piece of what was written, that kind of doesn't do it justice, you know. That just, it would be like, for me, like if I gave somebody a dish and taken off like one of the main pieces of it, like it's not really a complete dish anymore.
By the way, we both know that a lot of musicians work on songs for years. Is that the same with you? Are there dishes that you've been working on for years? I mean, like, I
Well,
know
you know,
that
there's a
every dish is being reworked all the time,
yeah,
but
right.
like reworking it and trying to figure out how it works before you give it to the guests.
Yeah, that's a very important aspect of what we do is making sure that we're eating that dish multiple times, cooking it multiple times, tasting and changing and refining to a place where I'm happy with it before guests would actually see it.
Mhm.
But then I'm also the chef that is not interested in having um, a signature dish, if you will.
Mhm.
So I don't want to be known for a specific dish, although there's a few out there that you can pinpoint me to. But I never set out to be that guy because I always wanted to be someone who's always changing, always evolving, trying to just create and not be stuck with doing something that I've always done. So when that happens, that dish will stay on for a while and we slowly try to take it off the menu. But there's always requests for it. You know, I just right now it's currently not on the menu, any of the dishes, and they'll make their special appearance here and there, like New Year's Eve or maybe Valentine's Day, or you know, where we create a special menu. I just I don't want to be known for that dish.
To put it in music words, you don't want to be a one-hit wonder.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. I can imagine, like, you know, the artists that get up there, the musicians that get up there and, you know, have to sing that two or three songs that they're known for, or but then Kiss does it incredibly well because, you know, I've talked to Paul Stanley and he's like, I don't want to sing any of the new shit. Nobody wants to hear the new stuff. They want to hear all of the great hits that we've done. And hey,
That's
he's
true.
right. He's right. You know, it's give them what they want, I guess.
So would you cook your signature dishes for for Stanley? Staley?
Yeah, he's had it before. And if he comes in again, I'll cook him whatever he wants. For sure.
Let's go to Britain in the 80s. Depeche Mode versus Joy Division.
Depeche Mode. That was on my original list, but somehow they got moved off.
Which one would you have chosen?
Oh, good question. Hmm. I don't know if I would have a specific album.
For me, it would be easy. It will always be Violator.
Violator, yeah. It's a great album
That's
too.
like when I listen to Mode, that's like usually the first one that I listen to. And as I know that you are also some kind of a visual guy, I'll give you two movies from the 80s that are known for their basically perfect soundtracks. The Crow versus Singles.
I'm not familiar with the singles are, but I do know the Crow, so
Oh, it must be the
stick
Crow.
with the Crow.
Okay.
I don't know the.
Singles is that grunge movie from the early 90s.
I'm gonna write it down and see if I can find it.
So, Chef Curtis, thanks for joining. Thanks for the insight. And
Thank you.
oh yeah, wait, we forgot the death metal record that you would listen to.
Damn.
I don't let you go.
Wow.
If you need a new one, go to veilofsound.com. We had a lot of death metal records lately.
Yeah, you guys. Okay.
And you will find some new death metal to like.
All right. I'll do that. I'll definitely do that.
Chef Curtis, thanks for joining. I hope you don't have a too busy day and enjoy the rest of the day in Chicago.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.